Okay, namaste, assalamu alaikum, sat sri akal, shalom, dorud, and greetings, Sanjay Jha.
Shukriya. I'm just delighted to be back here, Jerry, with you again. And thank you so much for inviting me for my book, 2024 India in
I
Free.
I have my copy. I have my copy too, and I need to get your signature. I got the first edition, I think, so I need to get a signature. Someday it might be very valuable where I can break in millions.
When I'm next in Delhi, that's a deal.
We should do that. We should catch up when you're in Delhi.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to kick off, to start, we have Sanjay Jha with us today for the Author Experience Conversation, Season 5, which is conducted by ICONGO, which is the International Confederation of NGOs, along with the REX Ideas for Action. And in the past few weeks, we've had some good people happening, starting with Bishop Ria, which was the launch of season 5. And before that, we've had several other luminaries and best-selling authors on the Author Experience Conversations. Today, we have Sanjay Jha. Sanjay, I look forward to our conversation about 2024 India in free fall, and I would like to understand more. I have browsed through the book, but I would like to know in the first person what makes you think that India is in free fall. Next week, we have another global hero who's part of the Mojosh Magnificent Seven superheroes, conclave that we are building. It's a storytelling experience event that we are building up, which is launching around September 2024. And Rusty Labuschagne, who wrote Beating Chains. It's a true story about being falsely accused, framed, imprisoned, and how he's come back and used that experience and resilience to create a better society, a better nation in his country, Zimbabwe, and now a better world. And in the first author experience conversation, which was last Sunday on the 3rd of March 2024, we had Bishop Ria, who is original inhabitant of Palestine. And we asked him about what are his thoughts on what is happening in Palestine. There is a genocide happening in Palestine. It is a global issue. I think it is a sick, evil issue which is plaguing our world today. To begin with, Sanjay, before we go into your story and into your book, any thoughts, any insights that you want to share on the genocide happening in Palestine? What are your thoughts and views on that?
Well, Jerry, to be very honest, I'm astonished as to how the United States of America, that calls itself as the world's most rocking democracy, and the Western democracy, where they talk about human rights and liberal values, how are they ignoring the United Nations Secretary General? I mean, right in front of our eyes. Yes, what happened on October 7th was dastardly.
And I would interject over there. It was dastardly and it was an evil act, no doubt, by Hamas. But there is clear evidence now that Hamas has been supported by Israel and crony countries like the US and UK. And since you started by talking against people in the administration, in the US administration, I would like you to, throw some light on that also.
Jerry, think about it. The young people in America, those who are educated, and especially those who actually have a liberal democratic spirit, they are the ones who are calling Joe Biden as Genocide Joe. They are the ones who are making it very difficult for him to possibly get re-elected. You have actually Jews in Israel, Jews in America, and all over the world who have said that what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing is a clear case of a humanitarian catastrophe with the principal aim of committing genocide. I mean, look at the numbers. I mean, 30,000 people killed, Palestinians killed in Gaza. Among them, thousands of children, many of them maimed forever. And the world is watching. I mean, just think about it. Even when you talk of a ceasefire, you have America actually vetoing that. You have the UK abstaining. And the UK and the USA are supposed to be the fountainheads of this great liberal, culture where we are supposed to respect human rights and ensure that there is no destruction of humanity. And that's exactly what they have now become an accessory to.
And in a way, I think, fortunately or unfortunately more, this entire episode that is happening, it's not just an episode. I'm sorry for using the word episode. I would say this entire appalling evil acts of genocide and war crimes that are happening in Palestine have actually showed the world that the so-called leaders of the West, some of whom have got Nobel Peace Prizes, are the biggest warmongers and the biggest war criminals of the world. Any thoughts on that? And I'm very unhappy to say this, and I'm going to say this on record, that I'm unhappy that India is siding with Israel as we speak. What are your thoughts on that also?
Well, Jerry, let me tell you that hats off to both South Africa and Brazil for speaking up. South Africa for taking Israel to the International Court of Justice. For the
Absolutely.
Brazilian president to talk about this is
Absolutely.
enough. I mean,
Absolutely.
there are new leaders.
And I don't think Bolsonaro would have spoken against it. He would have been
No
with it,
way,
but
no
Silva is
way,
speaking against
absolutely no way. And I can tell you that new leaders are emerging from the global south. Personally, Jerry, I'm glad you asked me that question. I was hoping that India will play that role because we have such a strong historical relationship with the Palestinians, both in West Bank and Gaza. And secondly, because we were developing over a period of the last decade or so, friendly ties with Israel. So you had both sides who possibly should have seen India as a more reliable, dispassionate conduit or an interlocutor to look at how you could possibly broker peace. Instead,
absolutely.
instead,
I so agree with
you know what I mean? Instead, by immediately talking about, the Israeli, whatever happened by Hamas, the entire attack of terror, and completely ignoring the Palestinian cause, which, by the way, you cannot ignore it, is the trigger for a lot of the madness that happened. Nobody's trying to rationalize the act of terror, but can you delink or segregate the fact that the Palestinian cause has been a problem for decades on end? And you have Netanyahu, who is on record to tell his own party members that we need to continue to support Hamas. So Hamas, at the end of the day, for all the horrific acts they did, what are you seeing in Gaza? The destruction of hospitals, the destruction of, you know, refugee camps. There are children who and others who don't have medical and food supplies, and the world is watching. That's what I tweeted actually, that I have been a huge sympathizer of the Holocaust victims. And I think any human being would be. I have visited concentration camps that existed in Germany simply to pay homage to those innocent people who were slaughtered by Adolf Hitler.
Same here, same here.
Yeah. And now what you're witnessing is the same, shall we say, Holocaust part two on live television and social media with the world watching and not saying a word.
And I'm happy you spoke about that, because I've been saying this. I'm a big follower of Paulo Freire, who wrote The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And in that book, he sums it up with one simple line, that the oppressed always become the oppressors. Paulo Freire, Brazilian teacher again. I'm a teacher from Brazil. And, before we move on to your book and your life story, do you think if Indian National Congress was in government right now, they would have sided with Palestine, or would they have sided with Israel?
I can tell you, Jerry,
candid answer.
A candid answer, the Congress party would have handled it, I think, very, very diplomatically, and more important, with humane considerations. And let me tell you this, while a lot of people blame the Congress for, imaginary and some kind of phantoms in their head, the truth is, in diplomacy and tact, I think this government is actually more transactional. I mean, think about it, that this current government of India refused to side with the human rights violations resolutions of the United Nations on Ukraine, because we prefer to, buy cheap Russian oil and re-export it, and just say that, hey, we were trying to increase our budgetary surplus.
And you're opening a Pandora's box over there. Do you think Russia is wrong in the war against Ukraine? Because as far as I see it, it's NATO which is wrong. It's the US which is wrong. It's the UN which is wrong. What are your thoughts on that?
My personal belief is that the hypocrisy of the Western world is completely exposed in both Ukraine, where everybody knows America is actually supported it greatly because of the fact that they can sell more defense equipment and arms. It's a great boon for that industry, which is critical to the US economy. And look at the flip flop. The potential president who could be Donald Trump in the United States has gone on
which I
record
which which
publicly.
I which I think it's going to be. So,
Yeah, yeah. But can you
unfortunately.
imagine Donald Trump says that what Russia is doing in Ukraine is okay. And he talks about cutting all support to Ukraine, and he's telling Russia to attack all the NATO member countries in Europe if they have to. I mean, how ridiculous and bizarre can America get? I believe you're seeing, Jerry, the decline of America as a moral superpower. I never had it, in my opinion, but they assume that position. It is clearly a country in decline. The
I've I,
UK has
in,
become a laughing stock.
Absolutely, and I've frankly never seen the United States of America or the UK as superpowers. I've always seen them as bullies, thieves, plunderers, murderers, and rapists, and I say that on record. With that, we're going to move to your book, and we are going to come to Sanjay Jha. Uh, you know, before we discuss 2024 India and free fall, Sanjay, you had a beautiful journey in your life. You are a learning professional, you are an entrepreneur, you are an author, you are a politician, you have been a former member of the country's biggest political party. Please, I know your life story, but please walk our audience through your life story. 7 minutes to you, 7 to 9 minutes. Over to you.
Well, I'm going to try and take less than half of the time, Jerry, because I don't want to do a TV commercial of myself. But let me just say basically that, I grew up in a family where we were surrounded by books. My father was a professor, and very early in my life, and a lot of people ask me, how did you end up joining the Congress Party? But when I was still probably in my school, my dad would buy us a lot of books on our birthdays. We were a typical middle class family where the father was a prof. And therefore, we were, always having a library to go to at home. And my father bought me Pandit Nehru's book, The Discovery of India, Gandhiji's book, My Experiments with Truth. And although I was too young to read them or understand them, but I did start kind of, glancing through the book, reading a line or a paragraph. But as I grew up, I did manage to finish them all. And I think they were a great influence in my ideological moorings. I actually write about that in 2024. I became, because of the fact, I think, greatly influenced by my father. So you can say that, yeah, I have been part of dynasty issues myself. My father was a prof in economics. I ended up becoming a postgraduate myself. I ended up doing a PhD in economics that a lot of people don't know about. And became a banker, ran through the usual corporate career, did my MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur, one of India's finest places, I can say, for a postgrad study. And I became a banker, Jerry, probably the most overpaid and, I thought, uh, underworked, non-creative, monotonous job I ever did in my life. It paid me a lot of money. You got a car and a house, and I worked with a bank and a mutual fund. So it was a good feeling, right? When I was in Mumbai, to have a South Mumbai residence, a private club membership. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing here? It was so boring. Everything is so regulated. And, fact is that you are only basically trading in other people's money. You're not manufacturing anything. You're not creating anything. Everything was based on fee income or some transactional fee that you earned. And we earned obscene amounts of money. I frankly got bored. When the internet boom happened, I followed my passion, cricket. And I ended up creating cricketnext.com, which uh, until, you know, until I sold it out, it was amongst the top two, along with the ESPN Cricinfo, on the internet portals in the game of cricket. I had no idea the IPL will happen because I had managed very successfully to sell it before that to Mr. Mukesh Ambani's media empire. They promised that they will make Cricket Next bigger than ESPN Cricinfo. I had no idea when I sold it out to them that they were actually acquiring me because acquiring my portal, Cricket Next, because they had their own plans to showcase their internet properties for their own IPO on NASDAQ. So clearly, when you deal with investors or potential buyers, to all the startups, be a little wary, be smart. You can get taken for a ride.
One of the reasons I stay far away from investors.
I can tell you that. I mean, they're hawks. And
Yeah.
in 2004, my wife and I started Dale Carnegie, which is a global firm in self-help, which is the famous How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's become one of the biggest companies in the world in corporate training, one of the best brands. And we run it in India for the last 20 odd years. It's become a great brand in India, a fantastic franchise. And I joined the Congress in 2004. Let me just add that, Jerry. When the Congress was down in the dumps, that's what I like about what I did. Congress was written off.
That's around the time when you and I first met also.
I think so. And I think 2004, when Rahul Gandhi had not even become an MP, he had not even filed his application for MAT. And I met him around that time. And we hit it like a house on fire. And he said, hey, listen, why don't you come on board? And I worked informally. And then around 2013, prior to the 2014 election, the Congress party said, listen, you have done enough of work for us at the back end. About time you become a public face. We got an election coming in 1 year's time. We're looking down a dark black hole again. And it'll be nice if you join the team and fight it out. That's my long and short story.
Super. It's been a great journey.
Fascinating,
as
actually.
an entrepreneur, as a politician, as a member of the country's largest political party, biggest, oldest, and largest political party. And now, of course, they're not there anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Jerry, good question. I think the Congress has itself to blame. I believe in politics as in sports. Your opponent doesn't beat you, you lose. Like, for example, if you look at the Federer versus Djokovic match at Wimbledon 2019, the famous game, you find that Federer won more points. Federer had dominated, actually, the five-setter. His mistake was that he lost the tiebreakers to Djokovic, who had far lesser points won. And the flamboyance, the style, the points, everything was with Roger Federer, including the crowd. Djokovic won that match. There's a lesson in politics. Today, if Narendra Modi and the BJP are seen as, insuperable, unconquerable, insurmountable titans of Indian politics, full credit has to go to the Congress party.
Absolutely.
You create your opponent. Your opponent.
And I'm so happy you're saying that, because I think the BJP is because of the Congress folly.
Yep, totally.
What are your thoughts on
Jerry.
that?
Jerry, just think about one number, okay? The Congress party in 1984 had 414 seats. Okay. It committed some political harakiri to go down to 197 in the 1989 election. But follow one part of the Congress's destiny that a lot of people tend to forget. Since 1984, in 40 years, Congress has never got an absolute majority. Not even once. It has been on a decline since 1984, things that many people ignore. Secondly, if the BJP comes from 2 seats in 1984, when the Congress was 414, the gap was 412.
Right.
And today is the BJP at 303 and the Congress at 52. I mean, frankly, it's irrational. Absolutely. And the only party that has to stand up and say we messed up, we screwed up, has to be the grand old party of India. And I say so despite the fact that I'm still a member, I support it, I fight for it. But you have to know that you could not keep your house in order.
Right. And we'll come to that member and the loyalist part later. But now let's talk a little about your new book. I have gone through some of your books earlier. You've done a self-help book earlier with a professor from the United States of America. But I want to know
the superstar syndrome.
And I'll talk to you more about that, and maybe we should have you on that Mojo's Magnificent 7 talk that we're doing as a hybrid event. And I will share more on that with you after we finish this talk.
Okay.
But tell me more about 2024, India in free fall. Why do you think India is in free fall?
I'll tell you, Jerry, why I say so. Because there has been an attempt made by the use of a powerful propaganda machinery that Mr. Modi and the BJP own. Yeah, where they tell the world that everything is hunky-dory, Amrit Kal and stuff. You really look at the hard reality. Let's look at some recent developments. Okay, you don't have to go too far. I mean, the whole book is written. If anyone reads this book, they will know that the dark underbelly of India should worry everybody in this country. India is actually, in my opinion, in reverse gear. It has regressed. Let me give you a couple of instances. You have an example of a few days ago, a gentleman called Mr. Gangopadhyay. He was a judge of the Kolkata High Court. He resigns and joins the Bharatiya Janata Party. And when he's asked in a television interview in a rapid fire, who would you choose between Godse and Gandhi? Guess what his response is? I need to think about it. This is the man who was the justice of the High Court, who literally has a problem, a dilemma in choosing between Gandhi ji and Nathuram Godse. It tells you how the poisonous fangs of communalism are so deeply entrenched in our, what I call is our social infrastructure, is there. Probably pretty much you don't know who the guy you're talking to, how fundamentalist or rabid somebody can be. Okay, let's take another example. Let's take out electoral bonds. Probably the source of political corruption in our country is electoral bonds. Mr. Modi's government brings this dubious instrument, which in 2018, which the Supreme Court says is unconstitutional and illegal and throws it out. Mm-hmm. What does the Supreme Court say? Please put out the list of all the donors. It could be, I'm not saying they are. Allegedly, it could be some of India's biggest crony capitalists. The Supreme Court orders the Election Commission to put it up on the website so that all of us Indians have a right to know, is there corruption, is there quid pro quo deals? The SBI, through the biggest bank in the world with 22 lakh employees, I don't know how many lakh employees they have. Okay, the SBI says that I cannot put out the names. Right. And this, they do it 2 days before it is supposed to be publicly disclosed. What is the logic given by SBI? It will take time. Very interesting. Guess how much time do they want? They want time till June 30th, by which time a new government post-election is up. It is so blatant. It is such a brazen fraud. It's an insult to the collective intelligence of this country. Jerry, it insults you, it insults me, it insults everybody.
It's a stalling activity, right?
It's astonishing. It's like, I don't care a damn, and these guys are actually...
And that, I think, is very stark, that we don't give a damn about who you are.
We don't care.
You don't matter.
We don't care. Yeah. Modi is going to town saying, "Main to chunav jeet gaya hu, hat-trick has happened, I'm going to announce my budget, and, historic changes will happen." I mean, look at the arrogance and the complete hubris of those statements. Frankly speaking, I think it insults the common man, because he's saying, you already voted for me. I don't even need you. I won the election. Absolutely. He doesn't need you, Jerry. He doesn't need me. He's won the election.
He doesn't need anyone.
Clearly, he knows something that we don't. And hang on. But they're so paranoid and scared to tell the people of India who funded them that the SBI actually is trying the most disgusting and repugnant, dodgy behavior to buy time from the Supreme Court, who will probably take a call on it tomorrow. But here is the point. Can you imagine anybody getting away with this? Let's take another example, Manipur, okay? And I have got hundreds of them listed in the book, so I'll stop at Manipur because, I want you to ask me more questions.
No, and since you asked about Manipur, one of the, in response to our posts, a blast which went out today, someone anticipated this, and he said, please do ask him about what is happening in West Bengal also. I mean, comparing Manipur with what is happening in West Bengal, right?
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, let me tell you, I am not somebody who's going to bite into whataboutery. What is happening in West Bengal, the government of the day will respond. And if there has been the alleged violence and the cases of sexual molestation, they need to be transparently exposed. But here is the question. Ethnic violence in Manipur has claimed over 140 to 150 lives. These are Indian citizens who have died.
Absolutely. And there's no
Okay.
mention of them in any media or in any political statement.
Nothing at all. Count the number of people who are homeless and living in refugee camps. They can't even go to the other side. It's horribly out of control. Guess what? It happened in the month of May, and now we are in the month of March. The Prime Minister of India hasn't visited Manipur.
And he won't.
I mean, it's a shocker, Jerry. Can you imagine, for example, a Biden not going to, say, Texas or California, where hundreds have died? The president hasn't gone there for 8 months. Can you even conceive that? I can't. Can you imagine Rishi Sunak not going to Manchester or Liverpool, where there has been a major, shall we say, conflict, a racial conflict, or some kind of a communal conflagration, and he hasn't gone there for months on end, and it's okay? I think no president or prime minister in any democracy could have survived this. But I guess, as they say, we are like this only in India. I can't. To me, it's appalling. It's absolutely appalling.
And I completely agree with you, Sanjay, because I have the same sentiments. I didn't mention this earlier, but to all the people out there who are in the audience, I'm absolutely non-partisan and non-aligned with any political party. I respect Sanjay's views as a member of the Indian National Congress, so I'm not aligned with them. Interestingly, you spoke about how the electoral bonds are not transparent and we don't know where the election funding is coming from. And, around 2011 is when I got fed up of Indian National Congress. I'm being very frank with you. I was absolutely fed up and appalled and disgusted. And I was like, what they're doing is deplorable, despicable, and disgusting, right? And I nicknamed the Indian National Congress as the Lutyens crony cartel. Lutyens, not Luthians, but Lutyens, because there was loot happening all over. There was silence all over. A lot of people think that they have regard for Manmohan Singh. I never had any regard for him because I was like, why is this man silent when some of the worst crimes are happening in the Congress regime, right? I remember, and I'm speaking from notes because as you spoke, some insights came to me and I made some notes. I remember Montek Singh Ahluwalia, the grand old man of Indian National Congress, making a stupid statement like 32 Indian rupees is good enough for a family of 4 to survive and live well. And everybody in the National Advisory Committee, which included activists like Harsh Mandar and Aruna Roy, was silent about it. And I had to shame them and say, you guys spoke against a $2 regime of the International Monetary Fund 15 years ago. Today you're silent. And this was what is happening in the Indian National Congress. So if you look at, if you kind of juxtapose two regimes, you will see that BJP is taking a precedent and taking a page out of what Congress did, right? Everyone knows there's a kind of a covert, subtle emergency happening in the country, right? Media being silenced, activists being arrested, students being apprehended. But this was something which was done very overtly during emergency, which was absolutely anti-constitutional and non-constitutional by Indira Gandhi. Any thoughts and insights on that?
Jerry, let me tell you, I mean, I understand your apprehensions and your angst and your anger at the UPA because the UPA abandoned governance by just collapsing against the face of an agitation that made charges against it. I agree with that. And the UPA, therefore, lost the elections of 2014. I think ultimately just deserts, right? Now, here is the point. As you rightly said, Mrs. Indira Gandhi officially announced the emergency that lasted 21 months. What is more dangerous, in my opinion, is this new, shall we say, development of the democratically elected dictators, these elected autocrats. What you have had in India since the last 10 years is an unofficially declared, well, I would say if you multiply 12 into 10, 120 months of an unannounced, unofficial emergency. Think about it. How many people today have landed up in jails for criticizing the government? The dilution of the RTI, the fear which is used to intimidate opponents and businessmen and activists and NGOs and think tanks and Amnesty International, a center of policy research. I mean, NDTV has been bought out by the blue-eyed boy of the government. This all happened in front of our eyes. Big media is totally captured. There's been a regulatory and media capture by Mr. Modi's government. You know, one of the reasons why Mr. Modi is seen as above it all, despite Manipur, not listening to the sexual harassment charges against a BJP MP by the women wrestlers. It denied India a chance to use a flag in an international competition. And this government called itself a nationalist. Think about it. Okay. Here is the point. He gets away on Adani, which, by the way, still has not been forensically investigated. Rafael is not really done yet, just because the Supreme Court said the procedures did not look, dubious. And we know what happened. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of India, who passed that judgment later on, joined the Raj Sabha. So I can tell you that there has been a complete breakdown of institutions in India. Look at the Election Commission today, Jerry. What is the headline that we have today? An election commissioner resigns as we
Yes.
talk.
Yes.
And guess who is going to? Can you imagine how disturbing that is? Because now the election commission is entirely in the hands of the government, because as per the new law, the Chief Justice of India is excluded from the selection, and a cabinet minister and the prime minister will decide who will be the election commissioner. So you have a complete ecosystem of regulatory institutions of democracy, and the constitution are all under capture of this government. And therefore, I want to answer you by saying this, that the UPA's biggest fault, in my opinion, was its inability to articulate its view aggressively and explain its position when those charges were made. To give you an example, for all the faults of the Congress, and you have every legitimate right to be critical of the Congress, can we all admit that until 2014, and Anna Hazare and Arvind Kejriwal could sit at Jantar Mantar, could go to Ram Leela Maidan. The media blanketed, the coverage of that entire event and totally destroyed the UPA. Honestly, they destroyed the UPA. 24/7, it was only Anna Hazare and, Kiran Bedi and
Absolutely.
Prashant Bhushan and Arvind Kejriwal, right? And as we discovered later, Jerry, Prashant publicly said so, it was RSS sponsored. It was RSS sponsored. He said so.
I said that from the very beginning when Anna Hazare reached out to us, because the first place where Anna Hazare spoke about the anti-corruption movement was the Right Every Wrong, the Rex Conclave, as we call it today, right? The Karmavir Awards.
Okay.
And then when he reached out to us, I said, I believe in you, Anna, even now, but I don't believe in Team Anna, because Team Anna is full of rogues and rascals like Kiran Bedi, Arvind Kejriwal, Prashant Bhushan. I consider them all as rogues and rascals. I'm being very straightforward. Yeah. I mean, they didn't want a balance of power. They wanted a transfer of power. That's the way I see it, right? And coming back to what you were saying, about the election commission, going back into the history of the election commission, and we did something on the electoral reforms with two big chief election commissioners as the pillars of the entire movement, to say that we need to move from the first past the post to PR representation, right?
Yeah.
Proportionate representation. And that was James Michael Lingdo and Krishnamurti. And before that, there was Session. And in James Michael Lingdo's time, the Chief Election Commission's office in India became the most respected office in the world, right? But I will say this loud and I will say this straight, I again blame the Indian National Congress for putting in a puppet like Navin Chawla after having strong men, powerful, mighty men like James Michael Lingdo, Session, Krishnamurti, who gave that office a lot of credibility. And they compromised that credibility by putting in Navin Chawla, who was an absolute puppet and a no-good Nick. What are your thoughts on that?
Now, I'll personally make a disclaimer here. Since I happen to know Mr. Chawla, I will refrain from making any comment on, whatever is his public perception and your view. I respect it though. I do want to make a point here that, what is worrying, Jerry, is that, we in India have allowed a normalization of opacity in the country. I agree with you on that. All political parties are guilty in different magnitudes. I'll give you an example. There is no denying, and I'm saying so myself, that the CBI or the income tax has been an instrument of political, vindictiveness in the past as well. Okay, I'm not running away from biting the bullet. I want this to be a very candid conversation.
Thank you
But the
for that.
scale, the ruthlessness, the intensity, and the viciousness with which the income tax and the CBI and ED function today is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And when the opposition calls the BJP a great washing machine, there's a reason behind that. I mean, look at it. I mean, you have today AAP's leaders in jail. You have Mr. Soren in jail, the Jharkhand chief minister. You have a situation where anybody who's been picked into the BJP becomes like, as pure as running water or bathed in milk and honey,
True.
including Mr. Ajit Pawar, who's their alliance partner. And there are a whole lot of politicians,
I like
Himanta
that.
Biswa Sharma and Narayan Rane and so on. But let's not make it that, detailed in the politics. But look at the shamelessness. I think what the BJP has done is normalized such a, they have normalized lynching. Now, when lynching happens, and a mob gets together and kills somebody on a suspicion of, kind of eating meat, which could be beef, it's okay. It doesn't make the front pages anymore.
And
In 2000,
I did it beef today, by the way. I'm in Goa.
you're in Goa. Okay.
Disclaimer.
And by the way, you have a BJP government. So cool, right? Yeah. So here is the point, Jerry. Okay. The hypocrisy, the duplicitousness, the ability to come on camera and lie. I call this as the, the government which manufactured fake news, which proliferated post-truth, which has multiplied alternative facts, and which continues to, in a way, make our entire public conversation extremely vulgar. You have a case today, by the way. One BJP leader, a pretty well-known gentleman by the name of Mr. Hegde, you know what he said today? The cat's out of the bag. And this is why I hope people watching your program wake up to this reality. Man, wake up, ladies and gentlemen. Graduate behind the WhatsApp University. This gentleman has gone on record to say, we need a 2/3 majority because we want to do something with the Constitution of India. Can you believe that?
No, and,
It's
and,
open.
and and
It's
I,
open.
I I have a feeling they will do that when they come back into power in 2000, because they
I
are
hope they
coming back
don't
to
come
power.
back. I hope they don't come back. I hope they don't come back.
Hoping against hope, but nobody is working on that. And when you keep saying BJP, I cannot help but point out to you, BJP is today the Congress, because every Congress member is in the BJP, except for
Yeah.
a few loyalists like you, who, even after being suspended for speaking candidly, are still loyalists to the Congress party and the Gandhi family, right? But most of your Congress members are in BJP, and I think that's a fact that we all need to acknowledge. That said, the other thing which I wanted to ask you is, you spoke about Ajit Pawar a while ago, and you know, I have a school friend who's my classmate, who's the spokesperson for the NC. You have been a spokesperson for the Congress party, and then you have the eloquent Mahua Moitra, who raves and rants in every Lok Sabha meeting against the BJP and Narendra Modi. And I completely appreciate that, because Narendra Modi is doing wrong, BJP is doing wrong. We should speak out against that. But I also feel that as spokespeople, we need to have a voice of conscience and not say that, ye gotala kar raha hai. The NCP spokesperson Clyde Crasto said a few weeks ago, and he said, somebody's doing gotala in Maharashtra. And I'm like, seriously, what bigger gotala could there be than the irrigation scam, which was done by the Sharad Pawar and Ajit? So I've seen this pattern again, where spokespeople of political parties love calling out other people, but they don't like taking a internalized view. You took that view and you got suspended. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Jerry, obviously, I spoke up because I thought the Congress was just giving the fight away to the BJP. without really getting onto the field and, knocking them out by giving them a solid punch. The BJP, by the way, if it was in the opposition today, and assuming the same set of issues, okay, an economy that hasn't grown, jobs that don't exist, India has record unemployment, the demographic dividend story is dead and buried. India has a high level of food inflation. The poor have paid a price. MSME sector is languishing across the country. The farmers are out protesting for a second time. You have a situation today where private investment hasn't gone up. In the last 10 years, your GDP growth on an average is 5.9%, which is, by the way, nearly 2% lower than what UPA did, which means lakhs of crores of difference between the two. You have corruption, frankly, in electoral bonds. I think if you investigate Adani and all the stories that came out, that ED went and raided a few companies, and after those companies were raided, they were forced to make electoral bond donations, which is basically telling you that there's been some degree of mafia culture in what is meant to be investigating agencies. It's a very, very serious charge. It's out there in the open, right? So in this environment, if it was a UPA government in power, just assume hypothetically, instead of Modi, let's assume hypothetically that let's assume that Rahul Gandhi was a prime minister or Mr. Kharge was a prime minister. If the BJP was in opposition today, they would reduce the Congress to less than 100 seats. That is the problem that the Congress needs to understand. The issues are there. I agree with the Congress when they say that it is not a level playing field. Of course it isn't, because the media is with the BJP, mainstream media. You have social media trolling at a very high level. You have a lot of threats from agencies. You have people who are censored already. Plus, you have resources, money, and muscle and might of the government with the BJP. Is it a level playing field? It's not. It's like Jerry and Sanjay Jha having a boxing match where I have the gloves and I'm like all protein shake, incorporated. You come into the ring and your two hands are tied, Jerry, and you're blindfolded and you're expected to beat me. I know you're tall, solid, muscular, and strong, but bro, I'm going to give you a punch wherever I like and I'm going to knock you out, right? So here is the truth. It's not a level playing field, but here is the reality check. If that is not changing, it doesn't mean that you're not going to win. You have to win despite those headwinds. You have to win despite those problems. So you have to think, if I don't have the media, do more social media, do door-to-door calling, hold more focus groups, do community town halls, go and use all your might to change the narrative. I mean, that's how campaigns are fought.
But unfortunately, the narrative is not changing because, okay, here's the other thing I see, whatever Modi does, right? Whatever Modi does, people who are Congress supporters, people who are members of the INC will speak against it, even if it is good, right? And then they'll speak against it and they'll rave and rant against it and they'll say, oh, RG is a better choice. I don't see RG as a better choice. I don't see INC as a better choice right now. And I think I speak for crores of Indian citizens right now, because we don't see RG or INC or INDIA as a better choice, because we need to rise on meritocracy. We don't need to rise. And this was one of your bone of contentions that you spoke about for what you were suspended from the INC. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, there is no opposition anymore. The big problem is not BJP. The big problem is that we have no opposition. So the people of the country are left stranded because they have no voice. BJP can do as they please. There's no voice in the Lok Sabha to speak against them. You have a Mahua Moitra or a Shashi Tharoor who speak against them, but they are already tainted and tarnished with all the wrongs that they have done. So there's no credibility over there. So what is left for the nation and the people?
Jerry, let me try and answer that in short for you. As far as let me answer the Congress part and the country's part. Yes, the Congress must have a more liberal internal democracy. Yes, the Congress must encourage people who are talented to rise to the very top and not be curtailed from getting there because they don't have any dynastic affiliations. I agree with that part. But let's look at the country as a whole. Over the last 10 years, We are seeing the minorities being abused. 200 million Muslims of this country are being made to feel that they're second-rate citizens. Do I need to remind people about the Ramesh Bidhuri speech in Parliament, where he used the most vulgar, violent language to insult Muslims of this country by the stuff he said? And by the way, the Prime Minister said nothing. You have a situation where women, the champion wrestlers of the country, are not heard because the government in power wants to protect a leader who will get them votes and disrespecting women. Bilkis Banu, the most tragic story of our country, gang raped. And on the day when we are celebrating our Independence Day, the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav in
Oh,
Gujarat.
that was an absolute potboiler.
Yeah, in Gujarat, 11 of those rapists are released. And guess what? One
Yes.
of them says, ये तो ब्राह्मण है, इनका संस्कार है, इनको छोड़ दिया जाए. Now the Supreme,
And of course, there were chants of Jai Shri Ram for all those evil sinners, rapists, and murderers. So
yeah,
that shows you how much Ram
yeah,
is respected.
and the central government okayed it, right? So I'm just going to tell you, these are serious questions of our moral, shall we say, existence today in India. I think under Narendra Modi and the BJP, and I can cite hundreds of instances. You remember that boy in Muzaffarnagar school who was slapped repeatedly,
Yes.
and he was a, I mean, it's like when you make hate go so become a retail franchise.
You have that rapist who has been left scot-free by Supreme Court 3 weeks or 4 weeks ago. Nityanand or Sukonand or whatever his name is. I don't even want
Yep.
to remember his name because he's a sick, evil bastard. And I'm saying
Yep.
this on record.
Whatever. I mean, you can look at it that, you know, I believe that Mr. Modi's government, Jerry, okay, has a legacy of fear, divisiveness, anger, and the absence of freedom. Personally, to me, these four things tell me that in India, democracy is non-existent, is as good as dead, and we are a polarized society. And that there cannot be anything of a more toxic combination other than being divided and being bullied at the same time that can really make any country actually have no guardrails to protect its citizens. Today, let me tell you, Jerry, people are so vulnerable that if today a Rahul Gandhi can be disenfranchised because he was critical on the Adani issue in parliament, if today any leader of a political party can be put in jail on trumped up charges, Sanjay Raut of the Shiv Sena went to jail. Guess what the court said? The court said the ED did not even have a case against him. I mean, it's unbelievable what is going on in front of our eyes. And of course, can we deny that we have put religion in such a, you know, we have kind of made it such a flamboyant poster boy of Indian elections that end of day.
And it's working because you have indoctrinated, blind believing buffoons out there.
Yeah,
And you know,
and
it reminds me of this quote by Henry Louis Mencken, which I put up on the slide. Democracy is also a form of worship. It is the worship of jackals, but jackasses.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on this? Because you see democracies around the world failing because people are choosing all the wrong people as the elected servants who they think are leaders, right? What are your thoughts on that?
You know, Jerry, I think
We have 10 minutes left, so I'm just going to keep this brief.
Yeah. I think this is a good question, and we should try and use this 10 minutes well here. I believe that worldwide, there has been a rise of this populist, authoritarian demagogue. Can you imagine Donald Trump with the charges that he has,
Right.
frauding on tax, getting sexual favors, trying to create an election fraud, create an insurrection against his own government. And this man, for all of Joe Biden's faults, I mean, I don't care who the other guy could be, but Donald Trump is a front runner to become the president of the United States.
Yeah, and that's exactly my question. You know, you kind of open the Pandora's box over here. Is okay, if not Donald Trump, then who? Hillary Clinton is no better. She's as evil as it gets. I mean, she's actually calling for the killing and genocide of children in Palestine. Obama has committed some of the biggest wars and has been a warmonger in his tenure and had the audacity to go and accept the Nobel Peace Prize. So who do you trust and who do you believe in? What is the choice that the people have?
I feel, Jerry, one of the reasons why a Donald Trump, a Putin, an Erdogan, a Xi Jinping, and, frankly speaking, in our country, there's been such a bulldozing or brainwashing of people. There's so much of gaslighting that has happened in India, right? Everyone is made to, fall for this personality cult politics. A lot of it has to do with something that I need to mention before we wrap up your program in another 10 minutes, is the rise of social media. We don't realize it, Jerry, but, today a lot of people who are, work 9 to 5 or 9 to 7, they get information only in this WhatsApp university. There are
Right,
PhDs there are professors there who manufacture news.
right.
And the way they do that, thanks to artificial intelligence,
And then you
Jerry, you're
have
going to have a
troll factories which are appointed
troll
by
factories.
different parties, including the
Absolutely.
Jaggi Vasudevs of the world who have troll factories.
Everywhere people are now having a freewheeling time, distributing anything they can because they know, they can possibly do it. And end of day, people are susceptible. If you repeatedly hear the same lie, that becomes the truth, right? So
Unfortunately, unfortunately.
yeah, I'll give you an example. I remember in the 2017, I think, UP Assembly elections, there were WhatsApp groups, 50,000 WhatsApp groups, some of them saying that, if the Congress wins or the secular liberals win, whatever they're called as secular and libtards, if they win, if the BJP loses, the Muslim population will become 50% of the population within the next 10 years or 5 years. Absolute mathematical absurdity. But this
Right.
is what is floated, right? Just think of one logic. Think of one logic. I have dealt with many people from the BJP who say that, what, it's a big threat. Hindu khatre mein hai. That's one of the very popular lines in Indian politics.
No,
Ask yourself,
I believe it. I have a rejoinder to it. हिंदू
yeah,
खतरे में हिंदू से ही खतरा है क्योंकि जब टाइम आएगा तो सबसे बड़ा ब्राह्मण सबको मार देगा.
I don't want to get into that, but I just want to tell you this, that end of day, 80% of our population is what it is, right? And, how can you even conceive that, the minorities are going to outnumber the majority, etc., etc.? So there is this whole atmosphere created just to polarize our society, just to divide our people, and then obviously make an electoral windfall.
But if it was so easy to divide people, it also means that it has been underlying for many years, many centuries, many generations. Because whether you like it or not, Sanjay Jha, we are all indoctrinated to believe that our caste, our gotra, our race is better, our religion is better. It's the way of the world. And I think that is the big evil happening in the world today. The other thing I want to ask you is there is a study which shows, the FBI profiler did a study and they actually commissioned the study to learn more about how serial killers kind of you know work. How do they operate? And then somewhere during the study they realized that most serial killers are either psychopaths or sociopaths, and that people who aspire for power be it in the corporate circles or in the political circles, they are similar. And that's what the other thing is, that this is what Frank Herbert says: all governments suffer a recurring problem. Power attracts pathological personalities. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I can tell you that I think it's playing out in the world as we talk. Okay. The truth is that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely is so true. And, as they say famously, Jerry, you give a man power and then you see the character of the man in terms of what he or she does with that. Have you ever heard of a politician who has said that I've had my time, I'm stepping down, let somebody else take over? It doesn't happen. In America, mandatorily, after 2 terms, the president must go. But the truth is that people love to perpetuate their legacy. everyone believes in politics that, they are absolutely irreplaceable. There is an element of narcissism or megalomaniac politicians in the world. And a lot of people joke that if you are not
And
interested,
you will even see that in golf club elections or housing society elections. I mean, the megalomania is even there, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I can tell you that India is polarized right down to the dining table in family rooms today.
Right.
And you'll find, in WhatsApp groups of colleges and schools and universities and MBA and ex-employers, you'll find people are actually, violently questioning each other, and relationships are breaking up. And people are very uncomfortable actually spending time with those with whom they don't have an ideological commonality. So bottom line, Jerry, is this, I believe that India is a great country. India has a future that it needs to take control of. India deserves better quality politicians from all political
Absolutely, and
parties,
I
from
agree.
all political
I
parties.
agree with you. I agree with you on that,
You know,
Sanjay Jha.
you know,
We need to choose the lesser evil, is the way I would put it. I have one final question for you
sure,
before we sum up,
sure,
and
sure.
this is what Bertrand Russell said. When asked how fascism starts, he said, "First they fascinate the fools, then they muzzle the intelligent." We can
Yep,
see it not only in our country, we can see it very starkly in India today. We can
yep,
see it in
yeah.
Israel, we can see it in the US. Do you think there's hope going forward?
I remain an eternal optimist. If when you finish reading my book, you'll find, in fact, it's interesting that you asked that, because if you come to the last chapter before the epilogue, the last word is hope. It's brilliant that you asked that question. And I'll tell you why. Because the truth is that India is a very diverse country. It's not easy for any authoritarian bully to kind of bulldoze people at will. It's not possible. It's very large country. Like for example, Mr. Modi may be very popular, or his BJP may be very popular in the Hindi heartland, but he struggles south of the Vindhyas, having a hard time. He struggles in the east. He struggles in the northeast. Not easy at all. There's a message there that I think this country has got a cultural, shall we say, uniqueness about. Think of the number of religions we have.
True, very
I,
true.
by the way, have been brought up. I'm a come from a traditional Brahmin family from Bihar, and we were brought up in the most liberal outlook. Amongst the people at home who looked after me when I was a young kid was a gentleman called Nurul Hassan, who was a Muslim. End of day, think about it. And I tweeted about it the other day, that can anybody make a film called Amar Akbar Anthony today? I mean, that crazy classic film of Manmohan Desai
Yeah,
brought communities together, right? And
I
that is the
completely agree
India.
with you. I completely
That
agree
is
with you on
India.
that.
And I have still have 1 minute, so I'm just going to try and do my part. You give politician an inch, he takes a yard. We have 200 ways, as Sashi Tharoor famously mentioned in one of his books. We have 200 ways of making an aluya. So my hope from the country comes from this: the poor, the farmer, the Dalit, the Adivasi, the women, the young, especially those who are disadvantaged, especially those who are not eating an avocado on toast and having a burrata cheese with tomato and driving their sexy SUV, and those who are not scared of ED, CBI, and income tax. They are the ones who are going to vote and save Indian democracy. That's where my optimism
I
comes from.
completely agree with you, Sanjay. And I write the Karma Kari book series where I tell true stories of real heroes, very ordinary people who are doing
Yeah,
extraordinary work, whether it's a
sure.
Lakshman Singh or Dashrath Manchi. And after meeting so many heroes, and many of them are awarded a Karmavir awards, I really give a damn about who the president of the United States or the prime minister of UK or the prime minister of India is, because these guys are all doing petty politics. The real guys are out there silently changing the
Yeah,
world, changing the
yeah,
country, changing society every day. So I agree with you. There is hope, and the hope lies with the common man, the ordinary people. And
absolutely.
I think I echo your sentiments on that. We are like, I wanted to ask you to share some thoughts for the young kids about how they can go about writing a book, but we are running short on time, and I'm sure you have
Another
other
time. Yeah.
engagements. 2 minutes for for summing up your thoughts, your insights. What do you want to leave the audience behind with? And before that, I want to thank everybody who has participated with us and joined us on Facebook Live. Thank you for joining in. Over to you, Sanjay Jha. 2 minutes, 3 minutes. What are your, what do you want to sum up? What is the thought? What is the takeaway you want to leave the audience?
But I want to tell everybody here that, this is a country where I think we are predominantly young. I want you, all of you, especially who are young people, to ask themselves the question, is there any political party or leader who talks of climate change? Climate change is not some abstract concept, ladies and gentlemen. It's a reality. It's going to hit the world. It already is, by the way.
It has.
And I think politicians fight from cycle to cycle of an election, 5 years or 4 years, as the case might be. You need to look at political parties with a gravitas in terms of what are they doing in terms of climate change. Are they giving forests away to the multinationals and the corporates? Why are our cities polluted year after year? Are you going to discuss the pollution in Delhi every year for 10 days and forget about it after Diwali is over? I think these are issues that we need to really think of.
Absolutely.
Inequality. India can never be a great country if the poor continue to be poor and the rich are, simply getting all their lakhs of crores of market capitalization happening through the stock exchange. It doesn't make any sense. You are not going to have a rural demand. You're not going to be able to become a strong domestic economy. Most important, Jeff, Jerry, a government that does not spend on education and health. I mean, those are the two things. Why, Jerry, if you and I are having a conversation today and we are both speaking in English, and we're both living in reasonably good parts of a city, is because we are very privileged to have had education and had good health when we were children. We are part of this. We are very elite to have that access. But look at India's numbers, 35, 32% and 19% is the numbers in terms of kids who are wasted, who are malnourished, and who are stunted. I mean, if you are not going to invest in education, I would love a government to have an NHS kind of system where anybody can get any treatment at a hospital for free. Education free, make it like Germany, make it and budget for it. And how do you get the money? You tax the super rich, you tax the super corporate. You should have the courage to do that. You can't be saying, you know what, your son is having a wedding in an airport, so I will give it an international status and we will all dance to, the famous Western tunes of Rihanna.
With what you have just said, Sanjay, you completely echo my sentiments. You resonate my thoughts because I think education and health for any nation, not just India, for any nation has to be the number one agenda.
Absolutely.
Right? And I want to leave the audience behind with this. When you say don't talk politics, when you are indifferent about politics, you are not doing anything sane or anything sacred. You are actually denying your right to participate in advocacy because all politics, whether in India or in US or UK or geopolitics around the world, governs the way you get your children's education, you get health for your children. So politics is a part of your life. Don't distance yourselves away from that. Be a part of it and exercise your franchise wisely. That's all I would like to say to all. Thank you so much, Sanjay Jha. Pleasure learning with you and always a pleasure learning with you.
Thank you, Jerry.
And to all our people on Facebook Live and people who are watching it, please go and buy Sanjay Jha's book, 2024 India and Free Fall is available at Amazon and all the bookstores. Thank you, Sanjay Jha. Pleasure. Have a great evening and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much, Jerry. You were a wonderful anchor. Take care.
Thank you.
Buddy, thank you very much, man. I hope that was good.
That was good. Yeah, excellent. Okay, just give me a minute. I'm going to end the Facebook Live. Yeah.